To talk about the hurling, Mr. Tommy Walsh. Tommy, great to have you on the show again. You're keeping well?
Yeah, good evening, Joe. Great to be here.
We're going to start with Salthill. Galway 124, Kilkenny 317. 1 point win for Galway at the death. I don't know if you've seen this yet, Tommy, but there was a handshake at the end, which is actually generating a bit of talk. You may not have seen, you may have missed it.
Is that my get out?
No, there's no get out here.
Yeah, sure. Listen, I was up there, Joe. I was in Salthill. First of all, during the game, before the game, as you're saying to the lads that are with me, this home and away, I think is fantastic especially for these close encounters where you don't know before the match who's going to win, who's going to lose, where it's going to hang in the balance. The atmosphere, I thought, was electric, and it seems to be the home support usually have the biggest crowd, and that was definitely the way it was again at the weekend. But leading up to the whole handshake, if we say, the atmosphere was brilliant. And I think there'll be so many other stories probably we'll be talking about now only for that. And the handshake itself, like being there, right? I didn't see, the winning free, which was controversial as well. I didn't see that because I was still celebrating the goal, John Dundee's goal. Yeah. So we jumped up out of our seats just to fill in on the feelings for we'll say, I wasn't a neutral supporter, so that game was a Kilkenny supporter. So at the game, you're just exhilarated. Nothing beats a last-minute goal to win a match or to draw a match, especially when you felt maybe Galway were the better side in the closing stages. So it was just exhilaration from the supporters. We were up on our feet. Next minute, the quick puck out just went so fast. Next minute free, your emotions are all over the place. So up steps Conor Cooney, ball over the bar. Galway win by 1 point. So you were just devastated, really. Frustrated as well at the free. I didn't see the free at the time live. I've seen it since highlights and that. But so you're wondering, was it a free? There's booze and this going out. But Brian was on the way over to remonstrate with Colin Lyons. So if you devastated, really, frustrated as well at the free. I didn't see the free at the time live. I've seen it since highlights and that. But so you're wondering, was it a free? There's booze and this going out. But Brian was on the way over to remonstrate with Colin Lyons. So if you can think, in that moment, he was going over it, I would imagine, this is all only me, furious, I'd say, to see what the free was for. Why did you call the free? Time was gone for the puck out. And then Henry kind of came in. It was an awkward situation probably for him as well. He had to go, look for the opposing manager and all that was going with it beforehand. So he called him, and Brian was kind of called back mid-stride. Yeah. And then there was the handshake, and we all seen what happened in the handshake. But, I'm not surprised. This often happens in a match. It's just the fact that it was the two of them, and so much went into the background behind that story. It's what makes such big headlines. But it has often happened to me in a match where you get last-minute goal, you get bet by, and someone tries to shake your hand, and you wouldn't mean anything by it, but you're not in that moment to say, hey, listen, I'm mad about you, I don't care about the results, this is great. You're in your own head nearly, just all these thoughts going through your head. So I can understand what happened. Then the slow motion. Slow motion, Joe, makes everything more dramatic. And it definitely wasn't as dramatic as that live being at the game. But listen, I'm sure Brian was furious at the time. Then Sir Henry comes over and the rest is history, I suppose. But I spent 13, 14 years in dressing rooms with the two of them men, and I couldn't say more about the two of them. Great characters. I've often been, on and off the field, maybe you make mistakes, the two of them would back you to the hill, Joe. This is over the course of 13, 14 seasons, not just one or two instances. So both Henry and Brian Cody, I couldn't say enough about their character. They handled it, divided it really basically, and just let's get on with it. Because I still, I wouldn't have the same, he's just said in the moment, Shefflin, and this is what separates, the great managers. And he was able to stay in the moment and say, this is bigger than me or the two of us. Let's move on here and not, make a thing out of it. Same with, scene out of it. And same with his interview after. I thought they handled it, divided it really basically, and just let's get on with it. Because I still will harbour back that this is in the moment, Joe. We all make so many mistakes. I don't know whether it's a mistake or not, but we all make so many maybe decisions that if you had more time to think about it, you might make another decision, put it that way. And in that moment, I just nostril. Like, I rang my father on the way home, just for the crack. It was a bit of a laugh at this stage, and well, what do you think of that? And he was still up there. Himself and my mother were staying up that evening, and he wouldn't let anything be said about Cody, because he was saying, like, my interpretation would have been kind of something similar. So only the cameras are in your face as well in the crowd. He kind of put, like, it was a brief handshake at first, and then it was pulled him back, and it was kind of like, what you'd say to a lad is you'd be close there, fecker, I'll get you in the Leinster final, something like that. More friendly-ish, but obviously it didn't happen like that, because I just think there's so much cameras in your face and that, so you could interpret it any way you want. But I suppose at the end of the day, listen, I think these things happen in sport because it's two great men. You're going to create a lot of news headlines around it. But
of course, yeah. So you'd have had a bark.
I don't think it'd ruin their friendship or anything, go that way.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. You'd have a bark bite. You'd have had a bark back. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I'd not say that, because your lads will put this in a big headline on pitching. I wouldn't, because I don't know how I would touch. I don't know. I would put it this way. You probably saw me hurling over the years, 10 years, and you can judge what my reaction would have been, I suppose.
I think he might have given his hand a tug back, actually, and pulled him in and said something, yeah. So you think they're okay as people? This is heat of the moment, we're at war, this is, okay, emotions get the better of me, but you don't think it's an underlying, ongoing cooling?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't think so, because when they were together, they were, as we spoke beforehand, they were best buddies, and one of them, was the man off the field, the other lad was the man on the field, and they would have been very close that way. So listen, I don't know what's been done between, say, the other day and now, but I would imagine if they had a chat about it, and like adults, and got over it, I'd say there'd be no ill feelings either way,
Yeah. A last one for you. I don't really have a great feel for Shefflin as a character. Do you think it's the kind of thing that will have bothered him? And I base that question on just his look back at Cody, in a sense of,
well, sure, he would have, Cody would be like a father figure to most of the hurlers probably that he played under. So I don't know, Joe. I'm not going to guess here now. I suppose Shefflin will be a very good friend of mine, so I'm not going to start, I'd be close to Henry and would have been. And, I would have thought the same of Brian over the years. So, I'm not going to get in the middle and start guessing what one of them is thinking over the other. So, they're my feelings on that now, Joe.
What did you text Shefflin?
I'm a parcel, Joe.
Right, okay. Right, listen, we've put you up against a wall there for long enough. Did you think it was a free, the Cooney free on 75 minutes, the Paddy Deegan fell at the end?
I looked back at it and looked at the highlights of it, so I don't think it was a free, but I can see why Colin Lyons gave it. I always think with referees, the only time I will really have a gripe over with a referee is over sending offs. I hate when lads are sent off, basically, and I would always see a referee should have the mindset, make an excuse to keep lad on the field, not make an excuse to put him off. So look for a reason to keep lad on the field would be my, that would be my view on how a referee should either send off a lad or keep him on the field. When he's making decisions like that, listen, I think over the course of a game or a season, I think they tend to balance out. So Paddy Deegan got the ball first, which is crucial. If he hits the man first, then the ball, then it's a free all day long. But he got the ball first, and then obviously the man went with it. So I don't think that's a free. But we have the hindsight looking at all these different camera angles. Colin Lyons, quick puck out, he's looking up, sees a man poleaxed on the ground. You kind of have to make it, Paddy was there on top of him. You kind of make a split decision there and then, and I think he got it wrong, but I don't know. I'm sure there's other decisions we got in our favour over the course of the game. So, no, I don't think it was a free, but I thought Colin Lyons actually refereed it very, very well.
Who do you think was the better team, Tom?
Well, I think the way it is at the moment, Joe, is the teams that are winning tend to be scoring a lot from out the field, and I don't think we were scoring enough or were strong enough out the field compared to Galway on Sunday. I thought Owen Cody was lethal in the inside line. He's really after, stepping up to the plate the last 2-3 seasons, both physically and mentally. But out the field, if you look at Joseph Cooney, son of Joe, he scored 4 or 5 points. Thomas Monaghan, he scored, 3 points, I think. Brian Cannon, between inside and coming out, scored 4 points. So they scored a lot from out the field. And I think that's where they were much better than Kilkenny on Sunday. And it's not necessarily midfielders, because the way they're rotating now, you could be half forward for a couple of minutes. Tom Monaghan will say he was half forward and he was midfield. Same with Joseph Cooney. I think it's just them players out around the middle of the field. You need them on the ball and shooting. I thought where Kilkenny lost out right before half time. So we're now, flirting with the whole Limerick game, which is short ball out, getting into the middle third and lovely ball in or over the bar. We were coming out with the ball about 10 minutes before half time, Joe, and we were turned over so many times. And the crowd will obviously, who love the GA hurling folk, love the traditional game. Back to the 2009, 10, 11 finals. Ball goes down and best man wins it. The game has changed. So I think where Kilkenny failed the weekend was their execution of the game as opposed to their game plan. I thought coming out the ball, they're hesitant with their hand passes. They're taking, miss-hitting balls, 20, 30-yard passes. And that's where Limerick and the Watfords, the teams at the top of their game, are not failing. They're, passing 90% of them are going as completed. So I think Galway were definitely the better team in that they scored way more points. The goals kept us in it before half-time. But I think the second half, there was a huge wind up there, Joe. And I think we were in a good position after 55 minutes. It was a draw match. But probably, I think, went away from probably start going too much long then. Because, when you have a wind, the goalie hits it and it goes straight down to the full forward line. If we had been a little bit more patient with the game we were playing, even though we coughed up a few scores before half-time, I think it might have been more beneficial.
Mm. And what do you think Shefflin's done with Galway then?
Well, I think their tackling count is gone huge. And there's a big difference. Like I was looking at the Cork versus Clare game, and they were coming back in probably numbers at times, but not getting in with the intense tackle on the man, making them feel like this is a tough game that I'm in. There's 3 lads after hitting me, as opposed to there's 3 lads around me, I've nowhere to go. And I thought Galway, every time Kilkenny looked up, they were in, and they were turning over Kilkenny before half time, but creating scores off these turnovers. Like everyone speaking about Limerick, they scored 2-13 or that off turnovers a couple of weeks back. It's probably said in every club dressing room, every county dressing room at the moment, this is where we have to get to. And Galway are definitely listening to that under Shefflin. They can look up to Shefflin because he has done it. Like the old saying, do what I do, not what I say. Shefflin has been there, brilliant hurler, backed it up with work rate, which was often maybe not seen to the naked eye looking at a match, but we knew as teammates what he was doing, putting in the hard shifts. If the top lads are doing it, everyone else does as well. So I thought Galway's work rate intensity, plus Joe, they have lads back in form now. So Shefflin is obviously building these lads up with confidence. Like Joseph Cooney's in the form of his life. Pádraig Mannion is back to himself. Daithí Burke or old McInerney put in big shifts the weekend. So yeah, I think what he has stamped on him is they always had the hurlers, but that steely work rate that we always refer to, Joe, it means you could do it in, like that game was probably won 10 minutes before half time. So you'll often hear a manager go before, it's the last 10 minutes is where we'll win the game. Maybe it's not, it could be the first 10 minutes. And it was their work rate in different times of that game. And that's why they won by 1 point at the end of the game.
I'm curious for your thoughts on the interesting battle amongst the managers. And I don't mean the handshake here in this instance. So in that first 20 minutes of the game, by 16 minutes in, Kilkenny had 2 goals when Billy Ryan's took his second away. And, you were there, you'd have a good feel for it. That Kilkenny half-forward line came very deep, huge amount of space for the Kilkenny forward line. Balls in, were being won, like Owen Cody had an incredible game. And Shefflin had to react to that. Now, certainly Pádraig Mannion went in and Cody for 1, but things seemed to tighten up in the Galway defence, which was crucial because 20 minutes in, it was looking very worrying for them. So I don't know, what did Shefflin do there, did you feel?
Yeah, well, just watching him on the sideline, I could see him telling the half-back, and he was on the near side where Owen Cody was, and he was telling either it was their half-back or midfield, he was push back. So I'd say it was like follow your man to a certain extent. But there's a point here where if you see danger in around the full back line, you have to be able to cover it off. And the ball mightn't come down because if a half-back for Kilkenny comes out with the ball, sees Pádraig Mannion or someone sitting in the pocket, well, he's not going to give that ball in. And I think, first of all, that's what they've done. But I think, second of all, they just took the ball back off Kilkenny in their own back line. As I said, Kilkenny were coming out with the ball. If Galway hadn't been tackling with the intensity that they wanted, the ball could have went into Cody, could have went into Walter Welsh and these guys. So I think it was two things. He was telling his guys to hold back a bit at times, and then obviously their work rate was just huge.
What was your policy, Tom, when you were marking half forward, if you were a half back, if he started drifting out and getting on ball around midfield, did you go with him?
Yeah, well, I played in a much easier game. There wasn't that many decisions to make back then. You knew if the other guy got the ball down the opposing defence, he was going to drive it as far as he got. So I just predict where it was going to land. So I would always go as far as the 65, never go any farther. I'd let my man go off because, say, the 2004 All-Ireland final, I was marking Timmy McCarthy. And Timmy was a brilliant runner and brilliant player and a guy that turned up on the big stage the whole time. And in that final, I was playing back on him. And when you're young, I was 21 at that stage, keep your man scoreless, keep him out of the game. You're not really thinking too much of your teammates and that. But so Timmy, he played pretty well, all right. But I was following him everywhere, all over the field. But I left oceans and oceans of space where I should have been at number 5. And Niall McCarthy had a brilliant game on Peter Barry. But I kind of half blame myself for, now it was inexperience as opposed to an actual choice. But I learned a huge amount from that. So Niall McCarthy came out with a huge amount of scores. But if you look at, most of them are coming from where I should have been.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might keep your man out of the game, but you're letting down probably your teammates, So that's what I would have done.
There's a bit of, I'm all right, Jack, I got my man. And so does it work now, do you feel, if half back lets half forward drop deep? Is it then like, well, I'm passing him on, someone further up the pitch needs to drop back one, or we need to drop back one, and if their fullback's free, so be it. But my man's gone deep, so someone from full forward line or half forward line needs to drop in and watch my man if I'm helping out back here. Is that how all this works? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think definitely the way it works, and I think Limerick are probably the best exponents of it. You rarely see, say, Burns or Hannon leaving. Number 7, whether it's Kyle Hayes or whoever it is at the moment, could be Barry Nash at times, they seem to be given a licence to go up and down that field, where you will rarely see Dermot Burns or Declan Hannon going past that half backline zone. So I think for Limerick, they're probably doing the best. What are they doing? Like the last day Darragh Donovan scored 3 or 4 points, had a great game going offensively. But usually you will rarely see Darragh Donovan or Will O'Donoghue on the score sheet. Why? Because they're just constantly, covering space, making tackles, and they're making it hard, I think, so that Dermot Burns and Declan Hannon can stay back. Yes. So I'd say they're doing a lot of the unselfish work. Yeah.
TJ Reid off at half time. 34 years of age now, so people are pointing to his age, but I don't think he's probably had the body of training maybe in the off season that he might have had in other years. So he's working his way back. What did you see from TJ?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the story about his groin injury at the moment. I had a groin injury myself, got in the county semi-final last year, Joe, and I was never really injured. Groin injury is tough. Like 6 months later, I think I'm only getting back right from it now. And when you go in, like, all the strength now, they say, comes from your lower body. So that you're into the ground. That's why you're doing these deadlifts and Romanian deadlifts and all these, is so that you're strong, that you can burst out of that tackle the first 5 yards. Well, if TJ Reid's groin injury is still there, he's not at 100%, because that's where you win the ball. With the tackles now coming around you, you have to get past 2 or 3 lads, and it comes from that power of pushing off. So if that's Adam, like that's probably why he was taken off, because I couldn't. Now he was off the freeze. He probably wasn't himself, in fairness, in the first half, but I definitely would have thought I would have given him 10 minutes with that wind. There was a huge wind out there. So I definitely would have liked to see him if he was injury-free out in that second half for 10 or 15 minutes.
Because I was saying to James Scale on the Sunday, it's a small moment and you don't want to read too much into small moments, but he did get a ball and there was a route to goal, a bit of an angle. And he made up his mind very early, I'm not going to take it on. And it's the kind of thing, maybe if you're feeling good about life and your body feels good, you'd make a dash for it and you can decide late to go for the point. But he made up his mind early, and I just thought, he's not himself.
Yeah. Plus, I think I was listening to that probably on the way home. I think James also said that that's the difference between good players and great players. TJ knew now he's in a different phase of his career. So do I go on next minute? Back comes in, takes the ball off me, the Galway crowd then, or TJ Reid is finished, we have him.
Who wins a Galway Kilkenny Leinster final?
Well, we have a lot of hurling to do to get there. Parnell Park, first of all.
A lot of handshakes, a lot of hurling before then.
But listen, if it does happen, won't the build-up be extraordinary?
Just there better be a nicer handshake for then. I mean, regardless of what happens, just so we don't have to talk about it. They're tightly matched though, aren't they?
They are.
I'd lean towards Galway for what it's worth. I think Galway did look comprehensively the better team, but I don't know where the Salt Hill factor. I don't know what that's worth. It's bound to be a few points. Yeah,
well, I definitely think they had more lads that were in form. Like I think young Fahy was playing well enough. He went off. Brian Concannon scored 4 points. Like I mentioned, the two midfielders, Tom Monaghan and Joseph Cooney, Pádraig Mannion. I think Galway, if you look at their players, so many of them probably more of the Galway players have 8 or 9 out of 10 performances than the Kilkenny players. Like if you're to pick out Kilkenny players, you know, off the top of my head, I'd say Hugh Lawler. Like even Owen Murphy wasn't himself. I'd say Hugh Lawler and Owen Cody really would be the pick of the bunch. Whereas you could probably pick, you know, 6 or 7 of the Galway players. So I definitely think Galway were probably the better team.
Before we let you go, let's touch on Cork Clare. So Cork 220, Clare 28 points. I mean, you're working off highlights here, as most of us are, because this wasn't, this was on at the same time as Kilkenny against Galway, which is bizarre, isn't it? In 2022, like the 2 big games of the weekend. I don't know what the reason that is, but I'm sure when everyone saw that, they thought, well, what? Jeez, show us both.
Yeah. I don't know what happened there, but as an ex-fixtures committee member said to my father one day, like, fixtures are all grand until you have to go make them. And then you'll see how hard they are. So listen,
fair enough.
They rarely make that mistake, so there must be a good reason for it.
We got a false first impression here when Robbie O'Flynn had a great score for Cork, and then Shane Kingston scored again, and they're 2-1 up, and you think, wow, like this is Cork responding, and they've licked their wounds. And Clare blitzed them over the remainder of the half. 12-3 down after the first quarter. It's 15 points to 4 after half an hour. Cork were struggling on their own puck out, and I mean, there's a temptation to go straight to Cork because, you know, they look done by May here. But give us a word on Clare, because they are quietly going about their business here. They've beaten Tipperary very well, and they've beaten Cork better than that scoreline suggests. Yeah. And now, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see where they really are. But they've got something going, Clare, here.
They do, Joe. And just like I mentioned about Galway earlier on, a lot of players playing with confidence, a lot of players top of their game. Clare are much the same. You go into their forward line, like Peter Duggan before the last, we were wondering, come back from Australia, but is he back to championship pace? He has proved he's been absolutely brilliant in the first 2 games. Tony Kelly, you know, he scored one of the points of the season again, just up from underneath the stand here, over on the left. The Cork defender did everything he possibly could, over the shoulder from about 70 yards over the bar. Just unbelievable stuff. I saw Diarmaid Ryan, the wing back, went up, got a kind of a sharp ball back to him, over the bar from about 70, 80 yards. This is what happens when you have a team playing with confidence, Joe. And I thought the point, well, actually, I forgot to mention for the Kilkenny-Galway game, Joe, one of the best points I ever seen scored was by Brian Concannon. He was in on the end line, and you'd often tried messing around in the hurling field when you're on your own. You'd never tried in a championship match. I'd say he was probably the wit of the phone from the end line, curled it over the bar. I thought it was an amazing piece of skill. But what brought me to that was there was another fantastic score in that Clare game. That was the one, remember where Shane O'Donnell went into the corner.
Yeah. Do you know that's kind of everything we're saying about, God, sounds like we're ganging up on TJ here, but in the way that, you know, when you're not quite yourself, you don't do what Shane O'Donnell did, because he just kept fighting and just, you know, he's been a massive fill-up for Clare with him returning.
Yeah, amazing. Like there was 3 or 4 times the ball was nearly taken off him, but he just, as you said, he fought, dogged it out basically, gave the ball out to, I think it was young Ryan Taylor, and over the bar. What a team score. I thought that was an amazing. And like you say, it just came into my head there, probably a big factor in Shane O'Donnell as well, is he was off for so long. You can't be freshness. So he's just hungry for the ball. Like, when was the last time we seen him? Last year he got the concussion, so he was out for so long. So now he's back and he's tearing it up the first 2 weeks.
Well, without kind of trying to judge too much from afar, I suspect that was probably a serious situation for O'Donnell, and maybe he wasn't so sure he'd be continuing in his career, and suddenly you appreciate it a whole lot more. Like, he looks like a fella loving life, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have Shane O'Donnell. So all these guys, you know, Rory Hayes in the cornerback position for Clare as well. So there's a huge amount of guys in form, Joe, at the moment. You're asking me, what about Clare? They're playing with huge confidence. It's probably the exact opposite of that Cork team they're playing. They're playing with huge aggression. So Brian Lohan gets huge credit for his own probably character now being probably played through his players now. But also, I thought his tactical new was brilliant. Like, he brought out Peter Duggan with a fantastic game, full forward in the first game, put in young Mounsey, small guy, and Robert Downey. Because before the game, I was thinking, bring in Downey, he'll match Duggan for height. But no, he switched it around again. And, you know, even Shane O'Donnell out to the half-hour line for the first two games. So I think Brian Lohan has shown, you know, two sides to him there in the first two games. And definitely that Clare team are playing with huge confidence.
On Cork, they had this, tough league final, and then this incredibly demoralising defeat to Limerick, where again their frailties were really shown up for all to see. And you would have anticipated a real reaction, even just physically, from them. And it was, I'm sure you had the same experience, because we both watched the highlights. And in Kilkenny-Galway, anytime any player basically had a ball, he was like, there was hands on him, contact, there were rucks, everything was tight. And yet you saw in the highlights last night, Clare, just the same way Limerick had, Clare were working the ball from one end of the pitch to the other without like a hand laid on them. Now, I'm part of that is tactical, I'm sure, but also part of it just has to be, I don't know, some kind of fire in a team to say, well, if you're going to beat us, you're going to take some late hits and bangs, and it's not going to be easy for you to do it. But I think Shane Dowling put a piece of Limerick working the ball up, Cork doing similar, no glove laid in them. Like, there's something off there, isn't there? That's a, I don't want to say a broken team, but like, you'd have no faith in them going to Walsh Park now against Waterford and coming back here.
Yeah, they're definitely playing like a team that is listening to all the talk, that's listening to all the criticism and taking it on board, which you probably can't do. It's often demoralising. I find in this Munster round robin series, if you do start off badly, it's tough to get it going again, because it's week after week after week. And Cork are playing like a team that's just devoid of all confidence, just can't get it going. I've been there, I've been on teams that have been like that beforehand, Joe. Another one for them as well is the short puck out. When the short puck out isn't going well, it deflates the whole team. And this has happened to them time after time. And although it might be the best way to play the game for some teams, possibly at this moment in time, it is not the best way to play for Cork. See, what happens, Joe, is you play if you're trying to play the short game, and suddenly there's nothing on, so the goalkeeper decides, or the full-back decides to go along with it, you don't have the players up on the half-hour line then to get the breaks. So not only are you losing the short game, you're also now losing the long game. And it's very, very different. You could be trying your heart out, but you're just maybe 5 seconds too late or 2 seconds too late to get in that tackle. And what I seen from looking at the Cork-Clare game the other day is they were getting numbers to in and around where they should have been. But there was no one, as you saying, laying a glove on anybody. They were in and around it, but there was no one hitting a shot, nobody getting a flick, getting in a touch. And I think it's just that small thing is what they're missing, because they're fantastic hurlers. But I think they're missing, like, to win championship games, you have to be able to defend as well as score. The other thing I would have found in their first couple of games in the league final is, if you have half-backs tearing up the field, no matter how fit, you could be the fittest guy in the country, you're not going to be able to track back. You have to pick and choose moments to go up the field. Like Clare, when Clare played last week, when John Conlon made up that goal, I only saw him going up once. He wasn't going up 6 and 7 times. That meant he had the energy, he had the aggression, he had the ability to hover around the defence and get back and get in last-minute tackles. You will see with Limerick, you will see with Clare at the moment, and you will see with Galway the weekend, when their opposing forward gets the ball, there's 3 lads tearing in them to get in a hook or a block, and then even if they score a point at the last second through a few hand passes back out the field, but they're making it tough for him, Joe, and that's what Cork probably are not doing. Another thing as well that I find from looking at them is the tackling is so ferocious now in the gym. Guys are going so strong. You can't take the ball into the tackle anymore. No. Maybe one fella. And I think that's where they're making a mistake as well. I looked at a few highlights just to see what Limerick were doing. And I know some of their guys are just so big they can get around tackles. But a lot of the time if you see their sharp hook out, they get rid of it before they get into tackles. So they're finding Hegarty, finding Lynch out around the middle of the field. They're not taking into 2-3 tackles, and then the ball gets taken off them. So even if they maybe tried that when they're coming out with defence, like we saw Dara Fitzgibbon, I think it was, looking at it, he got caught for one of the points or goals where he's coming out with the ball, next to me solo back to his own goal, but holding on to that ball just too long, Joe. And then sure, with a team as hungry as Clare were at the beginning, they were going to take it off. So yes, no, I think the main thing is confidence, but tactically I'd say if to change around 1 or 2 of them little things, which would be just for the time being till they settle it back down, get rid of the sharp out.
Very good. Super analysis, Tommy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers. Tommy Walsh with us there.